Hey, I'm Brian Hiatt, and this is Rolling Stone Music Now. Today, I have an interview I did with Charlie Puth, whose new album, Charlie, is out now. Charlie, of course, is not only a pop star, he's an incredibly talented producer-songwriter who famously has perfect pitch. He opened up the process to making his album on TikTok, which was an amazing use of that medium. Today we talked in depth about the making of Charlie, about his time on Ellen DeGeneres' label, how he co-wrote the song Stay that became a huge hit for the Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber, his love for Billy Joel and Bruce Springsteen, and a whole lot more.
I just want attention. You don't want my heart. Maybe you just hate the...
Your last album, Voice Notes, was a huge step forward for you. It was really well received. I like it a lot, but apparently you were only 60% happy with it. Why is that?
The reason was because it was still during a time in my recording contract years where I was signed to a place that had some people in it that were not really motivated to have me finish a full body of work. It was really about, what's the next hit single? What's the next hit single? Hit single, please. No one was ever really encouraging me to finish a full body of work, so I had multiple hits on that record, and they were happy about that. And then when I showed them other album tracks, as they called them, they were like, yeah, cool, as long as it gets done. So that always kind of hurt and stung a little bit. And when I parted ways with them and went back to my original record label, Proper Atlantic Records, first thing they told me was that they wanted me to focus on making the whole body of work. And I was actually taken aback by it a little bit. I didn't really understand it because I was so manipulated in the past about just putting out singular music. In my mind, it meant, oh, you don't believe in me as an artist, that I'm going to be able to have another hit. You just want me to put the album out. It sounds crazy now because I'm so happy that I accomplished this album and got it done. But back then I was like a hurt dog.
There's more guitars, and for the first time, sort of almost like rocky, distorted guitars on this album. Is that you feeling the zeitgeist a little bit as far as what's popping out there?
Yeah, yes and no. I am aware of what's happening in the sonic world of music. I think it's part of my job. But this whole record came about from me combining things that I don't really focus on enough and things that I don't really know too much about, but give me a positive feeling. There was this song by Jimmy Eat World in 2005 called The Middle.
Hey, don't write yourself off yet. It's only in your head you feel left out.
Everybody knows it. It's in D major, and it's like mid-tempo, and it was played on every radio station in New Jersey. We heard it. And I was never like a Jimmy Eat World fan, but I know exactly where I was when I heard that song the first time. I was at Farsdale Middle School in Rumson, New Jersey, and I was going to the mall around 2:30, at 2 o'clock, and that song came on, and my mom dropped me off, and I felt like a teenager, and I felt like these were like my golden years. And it felt like the beginning of like a movie where like you see Bart Simpson skateboarding or something like that. I don't know if that you just paint that picture. And I remember telling myself, I feel like I'll make like a rock record one day, but I haven't, and I don't think I ever will make a rock record, but I certainly am going to capture feelings that a record like that gave me and make a song like Charlie Be Quiet, which is track 2 on my album Charlie.
Charlie, be quiet, don't make a sound. You got too long to live a little bit now. If she knows your love, she's gonna run right away.
And it sounds nothing like Jimmy Eat World The Middle, but it hopefully will give some other 8th grader that happens to listen to my album that same nostalgic, I'm in this moment feeling, like I know that tomorrow, like today is never going to happen again kind of feeling. I know that maybe they'll get that feeling by listening to Charlie Be Quiet. Not that I'm comparing my song to a rock song, but I wasn't listening to any particular genre of music when I made this album. I tried to encapsulate the feeling that I had from listening to music that I grew up with. That was a long-winded explanation of I made an album based off music I was inspired by.
I don't think That I Like Her, to me, almost has a Weezer vibe, which was very unexpected in the chorus. I don't know if you felt that at all, if you were aware of that.
I don't think that I like her anymore, 'cause we're all the same. All they wanna do is break my heart.
Yeah, it definitely was hinted at Weezer a little bit, and almost like a Penny Lane kind of situation where I loved how the Beatles put chord progressions on every other lyric, and they're almost like you listen to like Blackbird, for example. There's a Blackbird 1 2 chord Blackbird. There's more chords than there are lyrics at that part of the song. That's what I wanted to do for I Don't Think That I Like Her with the long title.
Blackbird fly, blackbird fly.
I feel like you kind of played into the Weezer thing. That's when I was pretty sure you were aware of it, because you were putting in little things that sounded like a Rivers Cuomo guitar fill. They might have been played on keyboard or they might have been vocal, but these little frills against counter melodies.
What's funny is that I don't even really know that much about Rivers Cuomo and about Weezer. I know some of the records they put out in '08, the one song that goes na 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 na. I guess I don't even know the name of that song. I just remember hearing it, and I remember it being 2008 and me being addicted to YouTube. I just remember where I was when I heard that song. I never really listened to a lot of Weezer, to be honest, but I guess when I was making that song, I subconsciously wanted to tap into that feeling of hearing Weezer for the first time.
I'ma do the things that I wanna do. I ain't got a thing to.
You have a lot of keyboard skills, but my understanding is you can barely play guitar. Sometimes you fake it on keyboards, and sometimes you sort of play a chord and then sample it and play it. What is your trick for laying down guitars?
So since we're talking about I Don't Think That I Like Her, track 11, for anyone who hasn't listened yet, that little bum 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 bum, the bum 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 bum, that was played. Those little beginning plucks were recorded with this iPhone here, and it was me playing just one little pluck, the boom boom, and then when you pitch it up in Pro Tools, it kind of shortens it. So I made sure that some of the lengths of the notes I was using polyphonic, and made sure that the duration of each note was the same. And it sounds, when you do that, it sounds almost robotic when you copy and paste a bunch of the same velocity note. Bunch of times it was da 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 da, and then I move the notes around, dun 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 dun, and I get almost excited by the roboticness of it, because I know that my guitarist Jan is going to play on top of it, and I'm gonna keep the robotic version for the punchiness of it, but the humanness is gonna be layered 2-3 times over it, and that's how I did Attention, and that's how I did We Don't Talk Anymore. Was the only song where I just used the original guitar off the iPhone sound.
We don't talk anymore. We don't talk anymore. We don't talk anymore like we used to.
It's now become sort of a famous part of the narrative of this record that you had those singles in 2019 and Elton John told you they were no good. What was the context of that conversation? How did you happen to be talking to Elton John where he decided to break your heart about these songs?
Well, it was less of a break. It was harsh, but it was important realization. I had kind of been in denial about how many people I was working with on some of these other pieces of music, and they just no longer. There were so many producers and so many writers. I've worked on music where there's a bunch of writers and producers for other artists, but for my project, it just, if one piano sound is wrong, it doesn't sound like me. So he basically told me, yes, you're correct. You are working with way too many people. You really need to get to, back to working with yourself and a select few, because that's how your music sounds most genuinely you. And I just was taken aback because he's such a legend, obviously, but he was the one who affirmed to me that I need to just start over. And then the pandemic hit, and I thought my career as a touring artist was pretty much over. But I performed for people in a different way, and I turned to the internet and turned on my phone camera and made TikToks of me performing in my studio, the breaking downness of a song.
Yeah, you really took very naturally to TikTok. In fact, I heard that your label was kind of sending other artists to your TikTok and being like, you need to be like that. That was just you naturally taking to it. It can't be really forced.
Yeah, I mean, Light Switch, the first instance of one of those TikToks reaching a lot of people, Light Switch, the reason why that video was even made is because it was so different from records like Attention and One Call Away and things that I've done in the past. And having that, being that I left my previous record label situation where I was so dependent on their seal of approval, and I felt like I didn't have that anymore. I felt like I was kind of flying without my instruments, no pun intended, but you know, when pilots fly a plane, they have instruments and it helps them land the plane. I felt like I was flying a plane from the 1950s, like I was just alone out in the sea, and I no longer had my person I run things through anymore. And I called my friend Jeff and I was like, this song is so weird. I have no idea if this could ever be a thing. And he was like, why don't you just tell people how you made the song? Jeff Levin at Atlantic Records was the one who told me, why don't you just tell people how you made the song in a really simple way? And I really meant it when I was like, what if there was a song that started off like this? I don't know if it's any good. If it started off with these Sade like drum, like boop, 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 and then I think mid-filming of that, I realized that I feel like people could gravitate towards this because it's so unique and strange how it all came together, and it sounds way more different than anything I've ever done. And then, of course, I upload it, and then I get a giant thumbs up from the internet, and they tell me, finish this song, and then I dragged it on for 5 months and started the album.
You said that the pandemic was really the first time that you got to slow down in your whole career, that you were sort of on fast forward the whole time before that. What were you able to kind of recover for yourself during that time?
Well, something that I've always wanted to say, I certainly don't make music for critics, but I was agreeing with them when they curbed my first album and they were like, this is the worst music ever. And I'm like, I wish I had time to make a better album because there are certain songs that I still love performing to this day, like We Don't Talk Anymore, which is like this dark pop, like Spanish guitar, like hodgepodge of multi-instrumentation. Like it was different throughout the time and it still holds up today. I wish I had 11 more of those songs on that first album, but we had See You Again, the biggest song since Lose Yourself, and I was never supposed to sing that record. I wrote it specifically for another artist to sing. And then I suddenly had to figure out how to be an artist in front of millions of people.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about.
And I was corny. I was figuring out how, I was 24 years old. I was figuring out what it meant to, like, how to sing in front of a live audience. I had never done any of this stuff before because I thought I was just going to be behind the scenes. So forgive me if I made some missteps, but I had millions of eyes on me. Usually you figure out how to do that stuff in private, make your record, and then present it to the world. I did it all backwards. And I forgot what was the question you asked? I'm having war flashbacks.
You're heading towards it. I mean, basically, the idea that you were on fast forward throughout your whole career and that the pandemic was your first chance to kind of like breathe and catch up.
It was, and it felt kind of weird and still and also good at the same time. I got sick so many times from flying on so many planes. But yes, the pandemic was the 2020 to 2022, mid-2022 was the first time where I was like in more of a chill mode.
What did you gain from that?
I gained perspective. I almost called this album Conversations with Myself because I was forced to not be around people. I literally couldn't, like, we had to sign waivers if you wanted to go into the studio with people. I was like, fuck that. I'm going to just make all of these songs and produce these songs all myself and finish them off with the people that I are in my circle, like J Cash. I don't really like therapy. I think that I can fix a lot of my problems just by listening to music and self-reflecting. I mean, therapy, I'm not dodging therapy. Therapy is good for some people, but for me, I've solved some of my greatest debacles by just sitting down at the piano and thinking about an alternate way to accomplish something. Maybe in the future I'll have a therapist. But for now, this album was my therapy. And I found out a lot about myself. And I went through two breakups. One romantic and the other one in a business way. Someone that I had started my career with was suddenly out of my life. But I felt that they were like less in my life as the years progress after attention. And it was a loss at one time of two relationships that I thought I needed to succeed, and two people that I thought I needed to succeed with. And when they left me, I figured out a way. I realized. Sorry, it's slight trauma. I realized that I'm capable of a lot of things, and making an album is one of them. And I'm gonna do this myself. And sorry, I'm reliving it right now. It's like I hope people listen to this album and realize how special they are, because I realized how special I was.
I remember that when you did that New Jersey TV benefit concert during lockdown, you were in your parents' house. Does that mean you spent some time living with your parents again?
Yeah, some of these songs were conceptualized at my parents' place. And my love of TikTok started in that room shortly after that filming.
It must have been weird to be sitting there sort of back to where you started, just with your keyboard.
And it was at their house in California, but since we had moved from New Jersey, but it gave me the same feeling of being dropped from Interscope in 2012 and leaving Ellen DeGeneres' record label and going back to school. It was a slight feeling of defeat and being bummed out that things didn't work out. I remember during that time, I moved back home with my parents after I graduated Berklee, which is like a musician's worst nightmare, but I was looking forward to figuring things out. Again, I was alone and I figured things out, and I took the approach of, okay, if I'm not going to be a famous singer, I will make songs for famous singers. And then, of course, I wrote See You Again and ended up being the singer. And it all worked out in a way that I didn't think it was going to. And I thought, here I am in March, April 2020. This is giving me a similar vibe of when I moved back to my parents' place at college. I know it's not a global pandemic wasn't happening, but if I figured it out then what to do with my career, I can certainly do it again. And I realized, okay, so what am I missing? I'm missing performances. I'm missing playing live shows. Like, is my career as a touring musician completely over? And the reason why I was asking that is because some of my best songs were made after coming off stage, going backstage, and then just encapsulating that vibe of playing for 10,000 people and then making something exciting for them that I could perform next year for them. I didn't have that anymore, so I was like, I got to figure out a way to do that on the internet. And like I said before, I turned to TikTok and started performing for my fans in a different way.
Speaking of Ellen, Grayson Chance just came to Rolling Stone and he didn't have a great experience on her label. He didn't have a great experience with her. What did you think of what he said, and how does that compare to your experience?
Ellen's never been, people describe Ellen as rude. I've never experienced that. Maybe she likes me. But I remember being really excited when I got offered the record. I'll never forget where I was in her dressing room, and they asked me if I wanted to be part of this new record label they were starting up. So it was a very exciting time for me, where I do agree. Not that we both have different experiences, but me versus Grayson. But I do agree with him that nobody was really present after. Certainly after the creation of my first demo EP, I didn't really hear from anybody after that. Not putting any blame just on one person, but from a collective, all the people that were in that room, they just disappeared. And but even then, I was fortunate enough to I got a scholarship to Berklee, so I was able to fall back on going back to school and finishing school. And I was I look back on that, I'm like, what a relief. I'm so fortunate, and grateful to fall back on school and to continue my education. So it was a real blunder that it didn't work out, but I went back to Massachusetts and continued my education.
So that's how it ended. You delivered a demo, and then just like they
And
ghosted you?
I never heard those songs again. But I don't know how good they were. Again, I wasn't a very I was a YouTube artist. I don't know how I don't even think I was a very good singer. I still don't think I'm a very good singer. But back then I was rough. So I was happy to not hear those songs anymore. But I do agree. I didn't really hear from anybody after I put those songs out. But it was a bit of a different situation for me because I was kind of glad that I didn't hear those songs again because I knew better things were coming.
I know you were just on Ellen's show. It doesn't sound like you've ever really talked this through, or maybe you have privately.
No, it's never really come up when I perform "See You Again" on her show. It's like I also don't talk shit on anybody because I believe everybody in this world is here for a reason. And when I saw her, it was it didn't feel like 4 years had passed. It felt like maybe a year had passed, and it was like, oh hey, great to see you. Okay, so we're gonna talk about this, and I was like, great. I just onward and upward.
You had a great response on TikTok, but I think it might have slightly got under your skin where that guy said, that you're a musical genius, but you make, quote, mid-pop music. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I don't know what.
Well, what is music for? Am I supposed to make music for geniuses only? I'm not even calling myself that. Like, imagine just making music for scientists. The sounds of beakers and boilers, and imagine only if you're a chef, but you're only gonna make food for people that like snails, and you're gonna call your restaurant Snail Food, and everyone who is gonna go there has no choice but to have escargot, and if you don't like it, you're not allowed to fucking eat there. Like it's such a stupid, myopic comment. It's I make pot, like, have your opinion. You took the time to write on my page, but I'm happy that person had that opinion, because if they didn't comment, then that's the way. They don't realize that would hurt me a lot more. I actually got a reaction out of them, which I love. But I'm making pop music. I'm trying to cast my fisher's net and gather as many ears as I can. So with that is going to maybe, pop culture is kind of corny. So it's inevitable.
It's funny because actually Light Switch, for example, has some pretty fancy chords in the intro. You tend to slip some flat 11ths and stuff. You slip that stuff in there.
Yeah, because I love David Foster, and that was a guy who made pop music, and Quincy Jones slipped in jazz chords, and it sounds I describe them as like expensive chord changes. They're chords with a little bit of rubby notes and dissonance and resolving, and especially in American music, you hear it more and more every day. You hear in that Steve Lacy record that's done very, very well. Those aren't just triads on that guitar. Those are, stretchy kind of. It's not. I wouldn't describe it as jazzy, but they're more complex than a 1-3-5. But that's just, I'm inevitably going to always put that into my music because that's from my jazz background.
Now, a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes the way we react to things isn't the way we'd like, but we're too used to the patterns we've set. Fight or flight, getting defensive, or blaming things on ourselves. Our first instinct isn't to go into problem-solving mode, but with therapy, you can change that. Learning to solve your own problems makes life easier. Sometimes just talking to someone can take a weight off your shoulders. But more than that, therapy can help you focus on solutions, instead of getting bogged down focusing on problems. And BetterHelp can help you do the same. They're a great option, convenient, accessible, affordable, and 100% online. Fill out a brief survey and they match you with a therapist. And if they're not right for you, you can switch at any time. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/musicnow today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/musicnow. So I wanted to tell you about a new podcast from Bjork called Sonic Symbolism. The series is brimming with Bjork's music, including unreleased alternate versions and demos. It features 6 hours of Bjork talking about her life and music. The series was produced by Kristen Kuhns of Song Exploder notoriety, and it's brought to you by MailChimp Presents and Talkhouse. Bjork played an extremely active role in the making of this series, including all the song choices, and even down to the episode descriptions. Just as with her albums, she tinkered with the series up until each episode's completion. There's a lot of Bjork albums I love, and this podcast is a deep dive into every single one of them, with Bjork herself telling the stories behind the albums and discussing their textures and emotional landscapes. Sonic Symbolism launches weekly on Thursdays, and there's already 5 episodes available. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey musicians, you can release your music on Spotify and over 150 other platforms all over the world through CD Baby for a one-time fee of $4.99 per release. CD Baby offers everything your music career needs to succeed, including social video monetization, sync licensing, free marketing tools, and more. This deal won't last, so share your music with the world today at cdbaby.com.
If you've ever wondered what it's like to chase your dreams in the beauty industry, now's your chance. Aveda Arts and Sciences Institute is now enrolling for November cosmetology classes. Don't hesitate. Schedule your tour today and achieve your goals as a beauty stylist. Use the code SPOTIFY for a free hot tool when you book a tour. Offer available while supplies last. For further info, tap the banner or visit avedaarts.edu.
You just covered New York State of Mind. Enjoyed watching that.
Some folks like to get away, take a holiday from the neighborhood.
I think I did okay on it. I watched it back. I'm like, ugh, I slipped in pitch a lot. I had rehearsed it once.
It's not an easy song to sing. I thought it sounded really good, and the crowd loved it.
Thanks.
If you had to pick Billy Joel or Bruce Springsteen, the ultimate tri-state question.
Oh, man. I hate that.
Make the case for each one, if you were going to pick each one.
So Bruce Springsteen, believe it or not, I only started listening to Bruce after 9/11 because he made the Rising. And in my opinion, that's a no-skip album because it beautifully, and I've told him this, it beautifully painted such a dark, tormented time in such a, but visually in the beautiful month of September in New Jersey. And, living in the East Coast, like September is the best time to be in New York. September is the best time to be in the East Coast because it's the fall foliage. You still get a little bit of the summer heat. And I remember that day very vividly, and it was just an unusually perfect day out and just seeing black smoke. And and then hearing Bruce's album, there's a song, the track 1 is called Lonesome Day.
It's gonna be okay. I can just get through this lonesome day.
And it's an F major, and it sounds like Hungry Heart, which is his prior work.
Everybody's got a hungry heart. Everybody's got a hungry heart.
And it's very happy sounding, but it's literally about 9/11. It's the saddest day ever. And I was always so fascinated how he was able on The Rising to combine happy chords, happy sentiment with the main dichotomy being what was being sung lyrically, happy and sad at the same time. And so I then I discovered other Greetings from Asbury Park and went backwards from Bruce. So I'm greatly appreciative of Bruce, and I don't think there would be See You Again without track 15 on that album, My City of Ruins, which has a similar chordal cadence.
There's a blood red circle on the cold dark ground. And the rain
to it, which has been used in many songs, but I was considering that.
Waiting on the world to change, right?
Exactly.
Me and all my friends, we're all misunderstood. They say we stand for nothing and there's no way.
There's a song called TikTok People by Stevie Ray Vaughan. That's where John Mayer got it.
One night while sleeping in my bed, I had a beautiful dream that all the people of the world got together on the same wavelength and began helping.
Oh, and of course, People Get Ready by Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions.
People get ready, there's a train a-coming.
There's Crazy Love by Van Morrison. The list goes on and on.
I can hear her heartbeat from 1,000 miles. Yeah, the heavens open.
But that's why I appreciate Bruce, and I'll text him that right now if I could, because he's, and I can, because he's a text buddy of mine, and he still lives in New Jersey, and I think that's super cool that a super successful artist is just back to his roots in New Jersey.
He's doing an R&B album, an R&B covers album, and it's getting a little too close to your turf, maybe.
Is he really?
It has like a Commodores song from the 80s, supposedly. Wow. So it's.
I'm super excited to hear that. And Billy Joel, I grew up playing classical music, and you listen to. I think his most recent record, which was still like almost 30 years ago, River of Dreams. There's a song called Lullaby. I think he wrote for his daughter Alexa.
Good night, my angel, time to close your eyes and save these questions.
It almost sounds like a classical piece of music. And I remember hearing that. It's like, that's like the music that I'm learning, that my piano teacher is teaching me, but it's a pop song. That just affirms to me that I can learn, I can not get discouraged about not nailing the Mozart piano concerto, because I can just learn it to the best of my ability and then make it into a pop song. And Billy Joel was the living proof of that to be possible. Like, I can be a successful artist and play the piano, which, my friends made fun of me for playing, but because I was a dork in middle school and beyond. But I looked at Billy Joel as the cool guy who made classical music into pop music.
I wanted to ask you about working on Stay, the Kid Laroi song that ended up having Bieber on it.
I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you.
There's like a lot of people credited on that. I think you were hanging out in a house, and tell me about the circumstances that led to that and how that came together.
I think one of Leroy's, I don't know anybody on his team, but I think one of his guys, like, who doesn't even make music, was just sitting in the room and maybe like took credit for the song. I wasn't really involved in that, but I guess that's how that world works. I'm usually the only producer for my own music, but sometimes I'll venture out and make music for other people. But it was really Blake Slacken, Omar Fetty, and myself and Leroy that made that. Leroy came up with, I do the same thing I told you that I never would, but I did the melody because I had been listening to a bunch of Chicago on the way over to that session.
Wow.
And like dun, 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 or that's not Chicago. Who said when you get up in New York City?
Oh yeah. But sorry.
Yeah, so whatever the fuck that song is called, it's dun 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 dun. You have that melody, and then the singer would come in. I'm gonna sound like such a moron that I didn't know the name of that song.
No, I can't think of it either. It's a total thing from my childhood that I'm completely blanking on. But we'll figure it out.
Well, regardless, there's songs like that. Sorry seems to be the hardest word. After all that we've been through.
What have I gotta do to make you care? What do I do?
I was listening to a bunch of records that had either the chorus melody or the verse melody at the intro, and the instrument was playing it, and then the singer would come in, and there was this instant relief of sense of familiarity by the listener, because they had already heard that melody before. So I started playing slowly, ba ba bum 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 bum, and this 80s like Dancing in the Gymatorium 1988 kind of sounding thing, and then it turned into
Christopher Cross, by the way. Christopher
Cross. Like I said, Christopher. Yes.
Wake up and it's still with you, even though you left your way across town, wondering to.
Like I said, that song by Christopher Cross, and that ended up turning into. I sped it up a little bit. On this harpsichord setting on the Juno, on my friend Blake's Juno, and then I got these drums that I had used on voice notes, this really punchy Lynn snare and kick, and all I did, I guess maybe being influenced by Blinding Lights, just did the and it kind of sounded clunky. The beat wasn't very good, but until Leroy got on the microphone and sang, I do the same, he freestyled that whole chorus. I thought he was going to sing something against that complicated melody, like something slower, on top of it. And he ended up doing it note by note, and I was like, oh my God, it's just like the Chicago song. We kind of sat on it for a year, and Blake was the one who championed it to be done. And I think people hated it at first. In the classic case of a hit song, everybody hated it except me, Omer, Blake, and Leroy. Leroy thought the song was dead, and we finished it, and then Bieber got on it and kind of gave everybody's trust. I regained everyone's trust in the record because he did a good job on it, and he's a superstar, etc. And the song doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Very happy to be a part of it.
It's a monster song. But yeah, there are like, I mean, 3 other producers credited on it, and several other songwriters.
So a really talented producer, Kaji, came in and did the middle section of the hyperpop section, the halftime section. So he came in a little bit after the fact, but he's a legitimate contributor to the song. I don't know who the hell everybody else is on there, but that's why I don't have people sitting in my fucking room when I'm making a song.
Were you just all there for the purpose of writing for Leroy, or was it just like hang out?
I think Leroy was on his way to go somewhere. The whole point was to just hang out, and then he was like, here, just play something on the keyboard, and that was the first thing that I played.
Your album is full of short songs. There's some songs that are like 2 minutes, and I think you don't waste a second, but how deliberate was that to shorten everything?
I just said everything that I needed to say. There's a song called Marks on My Neck that doesn't bother to go into the third chorus. Yeah, sure, it's the climate of songs right now. Granted, people's attention spans have been severely shortened because of things like TikTok and whatever, but I'm not exactly playing into people's attention spans. That's just, I legitimately had said everything that I needed to say on certain songs. So, some songs had 3 choruses. Light Switch had 3 choruses. That's Hilarious as 2.
Now you need me so badly, you can't be serious. That's hilarious. Thinking I would still want
and you look back to records like I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles.
And I say that something. I want to hold your hand.
Those records were maybe a little bit over a minute, and it seemed weird in the year 2000 when the average pop song was borderline 4 minutes. But now you look at that, and it's almost weird if your record's 3 minutes. Obviously, these songs are about things I went through, and these 2 vicious breakups that I went through, both professionally and romantically. And that's what this whole entire album is about. I'm very open about that. But what's intriguing is that I don't really even think about how a song is going to line up with my image. Like, I have the music video in mind, but I'm not like concerned about like a song making me look a certain way. I'm so concerned about how a song is affecting the listener and filling in the blank for them and making the soundtrack to whatever they're going through. And I guess that's maybe subconsciously that's why some of these songs are short, because I'm so concerned about other people's interests, and maybe people's interests in music right now are brief songs that they can play over and over again.
I really like the song Loser. What do you remember about putting that together?
I love it. I'm glad you love that. I love it a lot. I love that song. I love wordplay, and I remember this was a different time, but I was with somebody that, like a friend that I was that turned into something else, and I remember maybe I'm very nice to everybody, but I was distracted and very focused on my career, and I thought that I had lost that person. And I remember feeling like such a loser, like, I could have had such a great time with her, but I really lost out. I'm such a moron. I could have had that could have been something great. And I remember showering and having the word loser in my head and wondering why I never wrote about that. And then realizing that the words lose her sound the same as loser when you say it together fast, and it also just happens to rhyme. And when I thought of that, right in my head, the arpeggio in A flat minor, and that melody, oh, I'm such a loser, I feel like a cello would play that or something. It almost sounds like a nursery rhyme that the father dropping off their child like can't get out of their head because they heard their kids singing it on the way to school. Like, that's what I wanted it to. I wanted it to feel like the song's been around for 100 years. And so yeah, real life experience plus over musicality.
How do you hear music? Do you have that synesthesia thing where you see it in some way? How do you perceive chords and melodies and stuff? How does it sit in your head?
It's very. Pharrell told me that he sees colors. Foster told me that he can hear the music in his head. I can hear the song, the completed song in my head as well. It always ends up. It's me visualizing what a song is going to sound like, because it's weird using the word visualize and hearing, but I visualize what the song is going to sound like. It's the same thing as me visualizing what a party that I don't want to go to is going to look like, because I have a lot of social anxiety, and I tend to think about what the event or stage or party is going to look like in my head before I'm there to make myself feel better. I'm like, oh, I can go in that corner and sit down and have a drink if I need to be away from people. And I have it in my mind, and every time that I end up going to the party, it's like 70% of what it looked like in my mind, but ends up being 30%. What's 70 plus 30 is 100. Got it. It ends up being 30% different. That's that RFH math for you right there. It ends up being slightly different, but like sort of what I expected. It's the same thing as a song. Like when I made Loser, I knew it was going to be the tempo. I knew of what it is now. I knew there was going to be wide guitars, and I could hear the song in my head, but it's 30% different when I put it to the Pro Tools. So when I think of a song, I have to be able to play it in my head and not forget it. And then if I think of a song and I forget it like 20 minutes later, that means I don't care about it, and it doesn't deserve to go into Pro Tools. But if I have the Loser melody in my mind, I drive down Melrose quickly to the studio where I was recording at the time and get it done.
What did you learn from working with Jungkook on Left and Right?
You take up every corner of my mind. What you gonna do now? Ever since the day you went away, no, I don't know how
I learned that no matter what language you speak, you can communicate with somebody through melody. That's the biggest thing I learned through collaborating with a South Korean artist such as him. And he, by the way, he's a low-key prodigy. He has perfect pitch, and he can recall any note right on the spot, which I found very impressive. But he doesn't speak a lick of English, and we're able to communicate like we're best friends just through music. It's a really nice, beautiful thing.
He can sing his ass off, obviously.
He really can. When he sent me that vocal, I'm usually going to war on vocals. Some collaborations I've done in the past, I'm really fixing it up. But he sent me, I would say him and Boys II Men, when I collaborated with Boys II Men, all I had to do was just take the vocals and just drop them in.
No, this is not goodbye. I swear.
And it's impressive that he's able to nail the English dialect in his accent too. It's really impressive.
You're obviously buddies with Adam Levine. How's he doing? Is it weird to have your friend like have the entire internet piling on him for 3 weeks at a time?
I think it's weird. I mean, it's happened to me in the past. I remember going on stage and, in my mind thinking, oh, it'll be super funny right now if when I sing We Don't Talk Anymore, if I say, fuck you, Justin, because that's a funny joke. It was really offensive, and he and I actually joked about it, I think, like a couple months back.
Fuck you, Justin Bieber.
So it's all good there, but I know what it's like to have all the fucking Beliebers at your throat. So obviously I'm not even really super familiar with the situation, but I do, he is a buddy of mine. I feel like sometimes I don't know. I was really taken aback by that, to be completely honest. And I don't even honestly know what to say because it's not a great situation. I can't relate to it at all. And I don't know I simply am just here, like, not knowing what to do.
I think that's fair. I will say, like, Justin's much funnier than people might assume. He pranked the hell out of you.
There was a moment where I was like, I wasn't like, I was almost like annoyed. I'm like, are you really bringing this up 6 years later? But yeah, I guess, I think he's a notorious prankster or something like that. So it's all good. I want to be the easiest going person in the music industry. I guess I have a bad sense when someone's joking because I took that pretty literally.
I am still so confused by the Benny Bianco thing because I've heard all different things that was a joke, that was not a joke. You said you weren't sure, but then I was like, are you joking when you said you weren't sure? I remained perplexed.
I'm just as perplexed as you. I also just don't care anymore. Sometimes I see those videos pop up and I'm like, is it over yet? It's kind of old. I thought we were friends. I don't know. Maybe that's like some weird LA shit. I don't understand. We're friends, but on the internet we're foes.
I know that something her told me, H-E-R,
I love Gabby.
She talked about being sort of a prodigy. She played a ton of instruments and she had her technical skills before she knew what kind of artist she wanted to be. And it seems like a very similar thing to what you went through. It can almost work against you when you have a lot of technical skills very young, because you have all these options. You have to figure out exactly what you want to do and what you want to be.
Yeah, but you don't want to, like, well, I shouldn't even say you don't want to. Quincy Jones told me that knowing jazz and being familiar with jazz compositions is your best tool to make a pop song, because you don't need to use everything in the kitchen sink to produce a record like Thriller, but you can use, like we were talking about before, a slightly dissonant chord and use it once in a while, and it's just enough for a pop song to make it just a little bit more interesting than, again, the triads and but again, it's all perception, because there's an artist, Claro, who made one of my favorite songs, Pretty Girl. She made it, I think, even before she was signed as a major label artist, and those are the simplest chords on a Casio-like sounding keyboard. And that still is a pretty powerful pop song that still holds up to this day.
Did Quincy recognize the extent to which you captured some of his vibe on some of the tracks on Voice Note?
Yeah, but I think he's he would be like there's this kid Miles on TikTok that's a 6-year-old prodigy and knows how to play every instrument, and everybody says that he's my bastard child that I don't know about. And
I've seen that kid.
I'm so impressed by him, and I talked to his dad. His dad's awesome. The kid is clearly a sick genius, but I'm not like overly like emphatic, like, oh my God, do you know what you have on your hands? You need to take him on the road immediately. Quincy was the same with me, I guess. He wasn't visually throwing his arms up and being like, oh my goodness, I've met someone who studied my works and I'm so proud of you, and quick, we need to record right away. He was very calm and collected, and I was playing because I was telling him how much I liked that chord, and I didn't realize that he fucking wrote that song.
Wild. There's a song, Feeling Yourself, that got left off the album. What happened to them?
Wow, you did research. It just didn't feel good enough, and I didn't want to perform it. And I finished it, and I was like, wow, I do not want to get on stage and play this, because it's too high. I want to I want to mess with my lower register. I want to stop singing in the heavens. It's really difficult as I get older to maintain that high register. But the main thing on that song was like, I just don't want to sing this live. And if I don't want to sing it I'm certainly not going to want people to listen to it. So it lives on the internet. The luxury of being able to just make these songs in a pretty short amount of time, I don't have to pay a kill fee to any producer. I just simply tell myself I'm not going to use that next.
On this song, there's a first time for everything. I think it encapsulates your ability to kind of pull cool sounds out and combine them. There's a great sort of evocative retro synth sound. And then there's that, the beat that I would call like sort of the Love is a Battlefield beat. Tell me about pulling those sounds together.
Well, the song actually started super slow, and there's this hip-hop record by, I think, Sofego, that had this really, there was a theme in rap music for a while, like around like, you know, Trippie Redd and Playboy Carti, to have a sustained chord and a sustained set of chords instead of plucked chords, like blung, 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 which was kind of the Migos era. It was the complete opposite, so that I heard these, and I was like, oh, I'm bored. I'll just make a hip hop beat right now, because I went into this industry producing hip hop. So kind of just to calm my mind and do something different. And then I was like, what if I turn that up 7 notches? So when, and then it made the entire synth faster. And then I put the drum down, and I already had a snare ready to go. And I was on the fast 5 because I had just finished Light Switch. And I, again, went into my mind, had a conversation with myself about a time where I experienced something firsthand that I had never experienced before with somebody. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sing about this. And my heart was beating really fast during that encounter. And how do I mimic that musically? And you make a song that's like almost 200 BPMs.
You seem to have made an album that you're kind of most comfortable with out of everything. What path do you see opened up for you now?
I think I'll tell you what I'm not going to do is make an album and not document the process and not have people watching it every step of the way. I don't think I'm ever going to make an album where I'm, you know, hiding away from people and I'm in my little cocoon, and then one day I'll be ready to share it with everybody. It just doesn't feel like me. It feels on the nose of trying to be too cool. It might work for some artists. Like, it definitely works for superstars like Rihanna and The Weeknd. And Prince would always do that, and you wouldn't hear from them, or Frank Ocean. But for me, I like educating, and I like, if I weren't doing what I'm doing now, I'd be a teacher. I like sharing in every aspect. I'm taking crazy pictures and I'm making crazy music. I'm sharing every aspect of my life. I do want everybody to know everything about me. So I feel like I'll take that same approach on the next album. My goal will just be to not make it sound like this album, whether that means using no synths and maybe recording it in Nashville with a full band, but making it still hit like a hip-hop record. That's actually interesting now that I think about it. Nobody's really recorded a band but made it sound, oh, that's not true. I guess Rick would always do that. Like when he recorded System of a Down, captured the real drums in the room, the guitars, but it still hit like a hip-hop record. So I guess I would take that approach, I think.
Your label's like, wait, did he just commit to recording his next album with a live band?
I always come up with ideas just like talking out loud. I'm sure the label loves hearing that I'm going to use a live band. It sounds twice as expensive as this album was moderately cheap to make.
Thanks so much for joining me. It was great to meet you.
Great to meet you as well.